Roses are red, violets are black. I missed the week of Stash House, but now we are back. Yes, it's Valentine's Day and love is in the air. For crime, that is. It's the weekly news roundup from your favourite weekly podcast dedicated to organised crime, delivered by two journalists with on-the-ground experience in war zones, trap houses and chain pubs. It's rarely a quiet week in crime, and this one is no different. But before we get into the worst of the death and destruction, let's head over to sunny Havana, Cuba, where over the weekend, authorities charged 30 people with stealing 133 tons of chicken and selling it on the black market. The Great Chicken Heist of 2024 happened between midnight and 2 a.m. one night last week in a state facility in the capital city. That's where the gang of thieves took meat held in 1,660 white boxes, huge amount, before using the proceeds to buy refrigerators, laptops, televisions and air conditioners, according to Cuban state TV. Where does one fence 1,600 boxes of chicken? Let us know. The gigantic total of stolen birds amounts to the equivalent of a month's rationing of chicken for a medium-sized province. That's according to the director of government food distributor COPMA. Remember, Cubans have used ration books since Fidel Castro's 1959 communist revolution, and everything goes through the state. Now, the heist comes at a prickly time for the Communist Party of Cuba, the PCC, which is struggling to feed its people off the back of COVID-19 and the economic fallout. According to the Voice of America, quote, the amount of chicken available via the ration book has fallen sharply in recent years as an economic crisis has brought scarcities of food, fuel and medicines. Many subsidized products reach the populace days, weeks or even months later than scheduled, leaving people who make an average wage of around $14 at the informal exchange rate to seek other ways to make ends meet. No shit. The 30 charged include shift bosses, security guards and IT workers at the plant, as well as groups not associated with the company. If guilty, the suspects can face up to 20 years in prison, and a Cuban prison is not where you want to be. Up a couple thousand miles now to Big Sky Country, Montana, USA, where according to an NBC report, Sinaloa cartel members have been targeting, quote, America's last best place, leading with the arrest of a former Mexican police officer, which brought down a meth and fentanyl trafficking ring in 2020. The article shows how Montana, which is larger than Germany, but with barely over 1.1 million people, has been flooded by drugs from the Sinaloa cartel. With such a small population, you might wonder why. The answer, as always, is profit. Drugs cost more up north, and cartels can charge up to 20 times more for fentanyl pills in Montana than they could in states closer to the Mexican border, according to law enforcement. Native Americans make up around 7% of Montana's population and live on sprawling reservations where tribal leaders are warning that crime and overdoses are surging. Writes NBC, quote, on some reservations, cartel associates have formed relationships with indigenous women as a way of establishing themselves within communities to sell drugs, law enforcement officials and tribal leaders said. More frequently, traffickers lure Native Americans into becoming dealers by giving away an initial supply of drugs and turning them into addicts indebted to the cartels. Opioid-related deaths have tripled in Montana since 2017, and the rate is twice as bad for Native Americans than it is for whites. Cops, however, have fought back. In addition to the Mexican police officer's arrest, which busted 21 other members of a Sinaloa cartel-tied drug ring, a second federal case has been brought involving Mexican cartel members and two Native American tribes. Stacy Zinn is a DEA agent who was transferred in 2014 from roles in El Paso, Peru, and Afghanistan to Montana. The cartel will send out their advance team or individuals to get to know who's distributing small amounts on the reservation and who we can get our claws into, she tells NBC. And then when they do that, then they own them. We've seen that over and over. Jurisdictional difficulties of operating on reservations do not help, she adds. Quote, we are fighting this problem standing on one leg and half the time we're handcuffed. We'll keep an eye on this one as it's an ongoing situation and we should definitely do a main show on Native American drug crime because it's growing fast. Now finally to El Salvador. We're keeping it Western Hemisphere this episode. And that's where last week Nayib Bukele won a landslide victory to keep him president of the small, crime-ravaged country for another 5 years. Bukele won over 80% of the vote and ran roughshod over claims of human rights violations as he vowed to continue his widespread crackdown on street gangs, including MS-13 and the 18th Street Gang, that has so far arrested over 75,000 people without charge. Leaving human rights aside, and Bukele's overhaul of the judiciary, and his change to the constitution allowing him a second term, and his dangerous embrace of Bitcoin and attack on the free press, most experts agree that locking up over 1% of the nation's entire population is not sustainable policy. Bukele, however, held a post-victory press conference to announce he would be doing just that. Quote, "If we have already overcome our cancer with metastases that were the gangs, now we only have to recover and be the person we always wanted to be." Now that really is crypto optimism, eh? Is it good news? Maybe not in the long term, but try telling that to Salvadorians who've been terrorized by gangs for decades. Anyway, that's Stash House, guys. Stay tuned for more next week. Like, subscribe, and, well, you know it. Don't Instagram your crimes.